Good and bad. I think, really good innings, and then I think, just pitches in the middle of the plate, which is what we're trying to avoid. Executed, but I think just the consistency of it wasn't exactly where we or he had hoped. I thought his stuff was really good. But again, I think just breaking balls kind of in the middle of the plate down as opposed to, backdoor to those lefties. And just probably some sequencing, doubling up or not, in certain counts. But stuff was there, but I think just the consistency of it wasn't.
7 strikeouts, just 2
But,
walks, but
a whole lot of runs given up.
conceded.
Yeah.
And another loss, 3 on the season now for Toronto. We're now joined by Chris Meaney of FTN Bets. Chris, just early season jitters for Berríos, or should we be more concerned at this point?
I think maybe the latter. I think maybe a little bit more concerned. I mean, you hope last season it doesn't carry over into this season. I know it's just one start fairly early, taking a look at some of his numbers in terms of, spin rate and velocity, kind of right on point with last season. But this is a guy last year, according to StatCast, had a 9.5% barrel rate, which was the 5th highest mark in baseball, and a 43.4% hard hit rate, which was the 3rd highest mark in baseball. And there are some elite pitchers in those categories as well, like Garrett Cole, Yu Darvish, Charlie Morton. But the difference between those 3 and Jose is those guys get strikeouts, and Berríos just doesn't. I mean, his highest K per 9, you got to go back to 2020 with Minnesota at 9.71. That's just 1 strikeout per inning. A 39% fly ball rate last year was the highest he's had since his sophomore campaign. And a 19% strikeout percentage last year was by far his lowest of his career. So he's not a guy that's missing a lot of bats. And you heard in the clip, you don't want to be, hanging pitches and leaving them over the middle of the plate because he's not getting a lot of swing and misses. So I'm slightly concerned about his outlook moving forward. It is just one start, but it's also against a Kansas City team that doesn't have a lot of firepower offensively. And last year they were among the lowest teams in baseball in strikeouts. And last night we did see a couple punch outs for him. So there's a couple positives to take away from it, but I do have a couple concerns as well.
Of course, Berríos just signed that massive 7-year, $131 million extension with the Jays. Do you think the Blue Jays and their front office are getting a little buyer's remorse? Because, like you mentioned, this is stemming from last year as well, and now to see it overtaken to this year, is there kind of some buyer's remorse kicking in for the Jays and the front office staff?
There may be, but at the time that they got him, they were really looking at him to be the ace of the staff, and he doesn't have to be the ace of the staff. I know that things haven't worked out great for the Jays rotation just yet, but Alek Manoah is an arm that I believe in. Kevin Gossman is the Cy Young winner. I certainly believe in him. He's got a nice pedigree of a lot of success recently as well. Chris Bassett didn't have a great first start, but he's a guy that can eat up some innings and limit some damage. So if he can just be a 4th guy in the rotation, now you look at the contract and you mentioned the money. I mean, not a lot of teams are paying that kind of money for a 4th and 5th starter inside of a rotation. But if he can just be above average and work on some of the pitches where he isn't hanging pitches over the middle of the plate and getting smashed, because listen, he's just trending in the wrong direction. I mean, the strikeouts are coming down, the fly ball rates are going up, the hard hit rates are going up. It's not a division or a ballpark that you want to be leaving pitches over the middle of the plate. So I'd say potentially the Jays do probably have some maybe they would go back and go a different route, but again, just to be their 4th or their 5th guy in the rotation, it's not asking too much.
Mm-hmm.
Now, with the bat, I mean, okay, they scored 5 runs. That's okay. It's not great, but 10 runners left on base last night. Listen, there are 158 games left, right? But as I mentioned yesterday, Jays fans can get very nervous very quickly. Where do you start getting concerned in baseball and with baseball as far as when does these games become meaningful and get real?
I'd say, in the middle of May. It's still fairly early. It's cold, right? Guys are wearing ski masks out there still. It's very chilly. The ball's not flying out of the park, although there is a trend that we'll continue to monitor here at FTN Bets, and I'm sure your viewers and listeners will as well. I mean, a lot of runs scored. Like, for example, 15 games yesterday, 13 of the 15 sailed over the number. I think with a lot of the changes in Major League Baseball, the bigger bases, the pitch count, no shifts, we're going to see some offense. But this is a powerhouse offensive squad. What, they got 1 home run, maybe 2? I think 1, right? They got their first one last night with Bo. They were top 10 last year in a lot of categories: WOBA, on base percentage, OPS, home runs, slugging. This is a team that is going to be one of the best offensive teams in baseball. They're starting on the road in some environments where not so much hitter friendly ballparks. They're going to be just fine. And I think overall they're going to be okay. I think the biggest weakness they have is potentially in their bullpen, but a good matchup tonight against Chris Bubich. So maybe they break out here this evening. They have a high team applied total of 5.5. It's one of the highest on the slates. Bubich has an 80% contact rate and only an 8.9 swinging strike percentage. And last year struggled with the walks, 4 walks per 9. He's given up some home runs, 5.80 ERA at home last year. If they don't break out tonight and score some runs, I'm sure Jays fans will be worried, but overall, it's still too early to be concerned about this squad offensively.
Yeah, I want to circle back to just the 1 home run in 4 games because a lot of the casual baseball fans will be like, wow, this team was hit 200 home runs last year and they only got 1 in the first 4 games. Is it just as simple as you mentioned, just they're on the road, it's an early season, or there's some deeper stemming issues that you see with the Blue Jays bats right now?
I don't see any issues at all. I mean, they got a guy in George Springer who is consistent. I mean, former World Series winner. Some issues maybe staying healthy and having a full season, but he's got a lot of stability up and down the lineup. Of course, he's going to lead off all year as long as he's healthy. And then, you see the matchups coming up here. I mean, you got to win these games against Kansas City, and the Angels, staff looks pretty good to start the season. So there'll be some tough matchups. It looks like they may avoid Shohei Ohtani, and which is a plus for them in that matchup, which would be the Angels home opener this weekend. But I have no issues with their lineup, right? I mean, Vlad Guerrero Jr. is a guy that's I think he's going to win AL MVP. He was my pick at 14-1 to win the award. Love Bo Bichette too, right? We're not talking about his defensive issues. We're talking about his bat at the plate. And I like what they did in the offseason too. I know it hasn't been a great start for Brendan Belt. I know he left a couple guys on base. I mean, you guys alluded to it earlier, leaving some runners on base yesterday. And that was the case for him, I think, a couple days ago against St. Louis. Some guys were on base for him and he just didn't cash in. But bringing in 2 lefty bats is exactly what this Jays lineup needed. I know they were aggressive in trying to get Freddie Freeman a couple years ago, but Brendan Belt, Varsho, a lot of heavy right-handed bats in there that can really smash southpaws, which I think we'll see tonight against Bubich, but also a nice little mix in there as well. The bottom part of the lineup, maybe some issues, but I don't think Whit Merrifield's going to be able to turn the clock back from a couple years ago, but he's still a nice veteran piece. This lineup is going to be a top 5 lineup in baseball.
You mentioned tonight, Bubich against Kikuchi. I mean, wow, what a great pitching duel this one should be. That being said, Kikuchi, a good spring training, right? Let's be honest here. I think an ERA under 1 in 7 outings. Where is your confidence meter regarding Yusei Kikuchi?
I don't want to be too harsh on the Jays here. I'm trying to give some love to the offense, but these are the 2 arms I do have issues with, Berríos and Kikuchi. You mentioned the spring certainly was fantastic. I mean, 31 punchouts was the most out of any pitcher in the spring, 20 innings. But my issue with him, 10 walks in 20 innings. Last year, 5 walks per 9. He had 100 innings, 102 third innings. He struck out 124 batters. Very different from Berríos, 11 K per 9, 27% strikeout rate, 13.3 swinging strike percentage, which really is elite. He's got swing and miss stuff. He can get guys fooled at the plate, but it's the command. 58 walks in those 100 innings last year. As I mentioned, 5 walks per 9, a double-digit walk rate. Doesn't even have a high fly ball rate, but he struggles to keep the ball out of the park. 23 bombs allowed last year, 27 in Seattle in 2021 as a rookie, 36. He has a 14% barrel rate. I just talked about José Berríos having one of the highest barrel rates in baseball at 9.6, 9.7. A barrel rate of 14%, extremely high, would be the highest in baseball. It just didn't have the innings to qualify. Tonight, his strikeout prop at 4.5. I do believe he's going to get about 5 or 6 punch-outs. If Berríos can get 7, you're going to see Kikuchi get 6 or 7 as well. But it's about command, right? Can he stay out of trouble, not walk guys? And then when you walk 2 or 3 guys and you're walking 4 or 5 per start, that's when you get into trouble. All of a sudden, it's a crooked number. You allow a 2-run, a 3-run shot, and you get yourself in trouble. That's why we're seeing a game total of 10 tonight between these 2 teams. But I do think he's going to punch out some guys. Has upside to be a decent 5th starter in the rotation. But I do believe this offense will break out and give him some support tonight.
Chris, I love your optimism. It's great. And listen, it's 4 games into the season. Jays Nation, like Leafs Nation, they descend into chaos very quickly. I think they're going to be okay. Yeah. Chris, thanks so much for this. Really enjoyed it.
I appreciate it. Take care, guys. Thanks for having me.
That is Chris Meaney. I mean, the problem is right now, you look at the AL East, right? Yeah. And Tampa's playing so well, 4-0.
Yeah.
Jay's dead last right now, which just builds the anxiety because it's the AL East. It's always a battle, right? And it's tough to win there. But that is reality.
I think, like Chris said, you got to wait till after the All-Star game, and then you finally start seeing teams, really gear up and you see the real true form of teams.
Speaking of anxiety, when we come back, Albert Vatanian is joining us. He's from Montreal. George Lurk, one of the toughest pugilists in NHL history, goes 1-1 with birdie.